This drill is designed for a candidate interested in the fire service. We will cover a basic overview of the chainsaw, parts identification, and terminology so that the candidate can build a foundation of familiarity and exposure that can be expanded upon later in a fire academy or as a probationary firefighter. So this is a very versatile piece of equipment in the fire service. It can be used for ventilation, forcible entry, overhaul, brush clearance, and anything else we can think of. So let's identify some basic parts of the saw. This is the carburetor box. Underneath here, we'll see later the spark plug boot. These are carburetor adjustment screws. This is the chain sprocket cover. Underneath here, we'll see later the chain sprocket and the chain brake. This would be a chain catcher in case the chain breaks and comes towards your body. This screw right here is a chain tensioner. This would be called the guide bar, and this is the chain. If we turn the saw around, we have the oil filler cap. So this is for bar oil. This would be the muffler. This is the front hand guard. It also actuates the brake. This would be called the front handle or the handlebar. This is the decompression valve. This would be the starter grip with the pull cord. This is the fuel filler cap. Right here, we have the master control switch. This would be the throttle trigger and the throttle trigger lockout right here. This is the rear handle guard, and those are the basics identifying the parts of the saw. Most power saws in the fire service are powered by a two-stroke engine. Two strokes fire once every revolution of the crankshaft, while 4 strokes fire once every other revolution. This combines the intake power and the exhaust compression into a more simplified construction, which lowers their weight and gives them a significant power boost. This is known as a high power to weight ratio, which is an advantage for a saw. Another advantage of 2 strokes is that it can work in any orientation because the lubrication is in the fuel instead of the bottom of the crankcase sump. So we can move it in any orientation and the saw will still run. If you want to learn more about 2-stroke and 4-stroke engines, I recommend a website called howstuffworks.com, which has great moving illustrations that can be helpful. So this particular saw is the Stihl MS461. It's powered by a single-cylinder, 2-stroke, 76.5 cc engine. cc stands for cubic centimeters. This is describing volume, specifically the displacement of the piston inside the cylinder from top dead center to bottom dead center. This tells you the engine's size and therefore the engine's power. So that works out for this to be about a 6 horsepower engine. Idle speed is 2,500 RPM. RPM means revolutions per minute. We're talking about revolutions of the crankshaft. Max RPM is 13,000, which is at or just above full throttle. This saw runs with a 20-inch bar that can accommodate different types of chain. Wood cutting chain, this particular chain is a carbide tip chain, which is common in the fire service to cut roofing material, nails, stuff like that. There's also diamond tip chains used to cut concrete, but not commonly used with this saw. 3 things that are important when matching up the correct chain to the correct saw and bar are first, pitch. Pitch refers to the distance between 3 links measured from the center of one rivet to the center of the third rivet divided by 2. When we're talking about rivets, we're talking about the first one here, count 2 more. So the distance between the first and the third divided by 2. That's going to be your pitch. The pitch of this chain is 3/8 inch. This has nothing to do with the length of the chain or the number of the links. It simply measures the space between the links. The next measurement is gauge. That is simply how thick the drive links are. See these teeth right here? That's how thick they are and how they fit into the bar groove. Too thick and the chain won't fit into the bar groove. Too thin and the chain will slip out. The gauge of this chain is 0.063 inches. The third measurement is drive links, measured in total number of drive links. This chain has 72 drive links. So if we were to count these, there would be 72 of them.
Okay.
If you take a look at this new chain, identified on this box is the pitch, 3/8, the gauge, 0.063 inch, and 72 drive links. So this chain goes with this saw. Chain can reach speeds of 45 miles per hour, so they can chip and break, especially when they run into hard metals such as nails, gang plates, piping, anything like that. To replace the chain or clean the saw, you first want to loosen these nuts. Then you want to take tension off the chain by activating this tension screw counterclockwise. Then remove the nuts completely. And remove the sprocket cover. Then you'll remove the chain from the sprocket. I'm untensioning the chain just a bit more. So if you see here, this is the sprocket, the drive links go into here. This is the tensioning screw that we were referencing, and this is the pin. This tensioning screw causes this pin to go forwards and backwards, moving the bar, which tensions the chain. When you're going to replace a chain, you want to flip the bar. So if the bar was originally in this orientation, now we're going to flip it to this orientation. This allows even wearing across the bar, especially along the edges. When you put on a new chain, you want to make sure you put it on the right direction. It's easy to put these on backwards. So in this orientation, you want the raker or the depth gauge to come before the cutter, because the chain goes in this direction. The raker comes first, and the cutter, which actually cuts the wood, comes after that. So this chain is on the bar in the correct direction. We're going to put it back on to the sprocket. And making sure that the bar is indexed on this pin. I'm going to tension. You can see the bar moving with that pin. I want to make sure all the drive links are inside the bar groove. You want to make sure you give pressure on the nose here to make sure the bar stays even. You can see how the drive links and the chain moves through that sprocket. So now I'm going to replace the sprocket cover and replace the nuts, only hand tight. And now I need to properly tension this chain. We do that by turning the tensioning screw clockwise and testing by pulling with a good amount of force and making sure that we can see 3 drive links out of the bar groove. Okay, so this chain is on.
We want to tighten those nuts
Fully after we've tensioned the chain. Okay. New chain needs to be broken in. After about 2 to 3 minutes of use, this new chain should be inspected and retensioned if necessary. This is the master control switch right here. This saw has 4 positions. Full choke, often referred to as cold start. Half choke, often referred to as warm start. Run, and stop. Choke refers to the valve introducing air into the combustion chamber and allows for a richer fuel mixture when starting the engine. A richer fuel mixture means there is a higher ratio of fuel to air. A lean fuel mixture would mean there is more air to fuel. When starting a saw that is cold, use the full choke position. If the saw has been run for a while and is a little bit warm, you want to use the warm or half choke position. The air filter needs to be cleaned after use. We access that through this compartment. This is the air filter. The way you clean these is with some compressed air in the inside to push the dirt and debris out from these folds. If we take this cover off, you actually can see the choke in a cold position and the warm position. That's the choke valve. This is a spark plug boot. The spark plugs are specific to each saw, just like the chain is. You want to match the spark plug to the appropriate saw. They have a code on them. It's a series of letters and numbers. It's also written on the box. So you always want to make sure you have the correct spark plug for the correct saw. Also, when you take these out, you want to make sure that they're clean. If they're dirty and have a lot of carbon, that can be a sign of your saw running too rich. If they're clean and discolored, maybe white, that's a sign that your spark plug, that your saw is running too lean. You also want to periodically check the electrode gap, which is the gap right here. This particular spark plug is supposed to be gapped at 0.5 millimeter. So this is my gapping gauge here, and you find the correct thickness by letting it snugly fit in right there. So this is my 0.5 millimeter. Now, if it's not the appropriate gap, we can use this tool to adjust it. This tool helps you bend this piece of metal further away or closer in order to adjust that gap to get your 5 millimeter. So now that we have a clean spark plug at the appropriate gap, we're going to put that back. Tightening with our tool. We want to make sure the boot has a good connection. Okay, so this saw runs on a 50-to-1 fuel mix. That means 50 parts fuel to 1 part oil. Remember, with 2-stroke engines, the oil is mixed into the fuel. Sometimes departments mix the fuel themselves, or you can buy a premix, such as True Fuel. Fuel goes right here. This is a flip cap. Comes with newer saws. Just flip it up, turn there, and we can see we have fuel. Over here is bar oil. We can see we have bar oil there as well. Bar oil lubricates the bar through an oil delivery port that helps keep the chain lubricated as it passes through the bar groove, reducing friction and thereby reducing heat. This is the decompression switch right here. The decompression switch removes some compression in the combustion chamber, allowing the engine to turn over easier, thereby putting less resistance on the pull starter rope. Not all chainsaws have these, but if it does, you want to make sure this is depressed anytime you pull the starter rope. Okay, so this saw has a properly tensioned chain, a clean air filter, clean and properly gapped spark plug, plenty of fuel and bar oil, so it's ready to operate. Safety equipment to operate this saw includes a minimum of gloves and eye protection, and you also want to consider ear protection, a helmet, and chaps if in the wildland setting. Okay. And then starting procedure. First of all, you want to have the brake on. You want to have it in the cold start position because we haven't started this saw in a while. You want to have the decompression button pushed. We're going to put it on the ground and we're going to pull the cord until we get a fire, or they call it burping the saw. So that burped. We're going to push the decompression button again. We're going to go to warm start and we're going to pull again until the saw starts. Uh-oh. You want to make sure you grip the saw like so that if you get any sort of a kickback while cutting, it immediately hits your wrist and puts the chain brake on before the bar can come towards your body. You also want to cut away from your body, so if the chain were to break, its natural progression will be along the line of the saw and will go this direction. You never want to cut in line. And that's it. This is just the basics of the Stihl MS 461 chainsaw. As you progress in your firefighting careers, continue to learn and master this piece of equipment, always keeping safety in mind. Thank you.